Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Game Design Archive with Edward and Ludwig. I'm Ludwig, and as always, I'm here with Edward. Hello, Edward.
Hello.
Today, we are going to talk about something very, very special. What is that, Edward?
Yes, so today we're actually gonna talk about something super boring. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we have to do it sometimes. Can't
we are,
always be fun.
We are gonna talk about tools today.
Mm-hmm.
Game design tools.
Yes, so like game engines, modeling programs,
yes.
sprite editor, stuff like that.
Yes, because they are very important
Yes.
when you make games, actually. It turns out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, but first of all, right, I want to, I guess, praise tools, right? So, like, the tools we have today is, like, insanely powerful, right, compared to way back, right? And, like, a lot of it is available for free as well, right?
Yeah.
We discussed this before, right? There's like this huge breadth of different tools you can use for different like scales of projects. Like for example, I don't know if you agree with this, Ludwig, right? But like I usually when I talk about when I talk with people about getting into game programming and design, right? I usually go with like, okay, so if they're alone, right? If they're not that about what do you call it, like programmer, like if they're more on the design side and less on the programmer side, I think they should go with Game Maker or Mono Game. And if they're more on the programmer side, they should roll their own stuff, right? C++ or C or whatever, and do and stuff. Again, for solo projects.
Learn OpenGL.
Yeah, or something, right? I mean, they can use libraries like Raylib or whatever,
true.
or STL, or there's tons of libraries, but like more control and more stuff if they're more on the programmer side, right? And then like for teams, if you're making like 3D stuff, I think Unreal is really, really nice. Like, I think it works really well for this, what do you call it? Like not big team, but like indie team or whatever, right? Of like, I guess less than 50 people or something, right? It's like super powerful for that. But it's not that good, I think, if you're alone or like two people, because it's it's too
like too complicated.
Yeah, it's too complicated, I guess.
And not like complicated to use, right? Because these tools are usually very easy to use.
Yeah.
And that's why so many people use them. But it's like they are, like if you're making a 2D platformer or whatever, doing it in Unreal Engine is probably a bit overkill, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's more like if you're doing a first-person shooter and you're a team of 20 people or whatever, that's when like Unreal shines, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, like I said, like if you're on the 2D, if you're making 2D stuff and you're like really into design but not that much into code, Game Maker is like perfect, right? Because it's like, I mean, it's not the fastest, right? But that's fine. But it's very powerful, right? You have a lot of tools, and it's very focused, right? We talk about this not on this show a lot, but tools that are very focused are way more useful, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
So Game Maker is actually a bit more focused than the bigger engines because it's like focusing on 2D and stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can do 3D, but like, it's not.
Yeah, you need to do like your own stuff.
Yeah,
but like I think like looking at something like Unity, it's a lot more confusing. Like if you're just looking to do a 2D game, right? It's way more confusing since you also have the 3D capability, and so it has like the 3D capability, but it like tries to hide it, but then you can actually kind of use it still while making a 2D game. So it ends up being very confusing for a beginner. Whereas with Game Maker, it's just you just have the 2D stuff.
Yeah, I also don't think Unity is that useful at that scale either. Like if you're a smaller.
Yeah.
I probably a lot of people disagree with this, right? But I feel like you don't get that much at like, let's say you want to make a platformer or something. I feel like it's more in the way than helping you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, compared to Game Maker, definitely.
Yeah, like both. Like we said, Unreal is more bloated. bloated is not like it's heavier, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's bloat in all of these engines, right? But it's heavier. But both Game Maker and Unreal, to me at least, feels like they are more focused, exactly. So like Game Maker is like the platformer engine or whatever, right? Sort of.
Or like the 2D game.
Yeah, 2D game. But even that, there is more for platformers, I feel like. And Unreal, right? It's the shooter engine, right? If you want to make a game with a third-person camera or a first-person camera, it's like made for that, right? So you're gonna get a lot of benefits from that. Whereas Unity and Godot, for example, it's just a bunch of nodes and they're not connected in a particularly nice way. So it's like, yeah. And I also mentioned Monogame, right, which is a framework, and the reason I recommend that for the like mid-level stuff, like what do you say, like mid-level stuff, like in between hardcore programmer versus don't care about code, right, is because running your own stuff gives you more power, I guess. I don't know, power is not the right word.
Freedom.
Yeah, it gives you more
flexibility.
Flexibility. Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah, because then you can sort of form the workings of whatever you're doing to what you need instead of instead of
trying to adapt a generic system into doing what you want.
So let's go back a few steps here, right? Why do we want to discuss this today, right? So we had this discussion before, right? Before the show, I mean, about how tools affect design, right? And so we came up with this analogy, right, to painting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in painting, you have different kinds of brushes and colors, right? You have water paint and oil paint. You call it oil paint in English?
I think you do.
I don't know what you call it.
Yeah.
And you have acrylic paint, right?
Yeah.
And you have crayons. I don't know if anyone uses those seriously, but I mean,
probably,
right?
Yeah. There are probably like fancy crayons that people use.
Yeah, and then you can draw with pencil and stuff. And what do you call those? Like marker pens? I don't know what they're called. Are they called markers?
I think they're called markers.
Yeah. So like and all, bad analogy. I'm not good enough at these terms, right?
Yeah, you're not. Good
you can draw digitally as well, right?
Yeah.
And all of these create very different styles, even with the same artist, right? That's the point, right? They look very and there is different techniques to all of this, right? If you look at how someone does, like, I don't know, like calligraphy, what do you call it? Like, when you draw like fancy,
like with the letters,
fancy letters, right? You like there's techniques to that or whatever, or like when you draw with a pen, you draw in a certain way, right? Versus a brush. Mm-hmm. Right, it affects the result a lot, right?
Yeah,
and
like even if you're trying to do the same thing, right?
Yes.
Like if you're trying to draw, like, I don't know, Spider-Man or something, you're gonna get a different result depending on
Spider-Man.
I don't know. I was trying to come up with something generic.
Can we do something cool instead?
No, generic. We're doing generic here. But anyway, so it's like you're not gonna get the same result with, like, you're not physically going to be able to get the same result with a watercolor as you are with an oil color or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's basically where we're coming from with this discussion, right? I think people are not discussing this enough, where I think these engines and tools are affecting the way games are designed more than people think, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, you can see that on like all Unreal Engine games. Have third-person cameras or first-person cameras and have the same shitty physics and look really ugly, right?
Yeah, I think especially like Unreal is the most egregious example, because if it's a like, obviously there are well-made Unreal Engine games where this isn't true, but for most Unreal Engine games you can see, like, from a screenshot, okay, this is an Unreal Engine game.
Yeah.
And as you said, you can also like feel it in like the movement and the gameplay and physics and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's also generally cool. Like it's a very laggy engine, right? They have a lot of like I think I could be wrong about the latest, like a 4, 5, 6 or whatever we're up in now. But they have this thing where they'll because they want it to be fancy and fast, right? It's like split, so you'll have like latency on the input because they're drawing like the last frame in parallel with the updating the current frame and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's also a bit laggy on that side, and it's oh boy, I don't know how technical we want to get, but it's like running. It's not running the simulation. What am I trying to say? So like if you think about a fighting game, for example, I think that's the best example, or an old game like a shoot 'em up or something, or like any old arcade game. They run on the clock, right, of the hardware.
Yeah.
And maybe you shouldn't do that, right? But if we go a bit newer, people still like lock the frame rate, right? So it's like the whatever, like I said, fighting games, they usually run at 60 hertz, right? 60 frames per second, because they have like all the animation data and stuff hooked. Correct, you know what I mean, right?
Where like to the frame.
Yeah, it's like everything is synced to the frames, and that, in my opinion, usually feels better, right? Whereas a lot of these again heavier engines, I understand why they do it, because they want to push more graphical stuff. But for the like it's costing in the game feel, right? Because what happens is they don't do that thing. They're more lenient with the frame rate or whatever. It's like, oh, it can be this or that, right? It uses time to figure out the frame rate and stuff. So it's not to figure out
like the frame rate isn't locked. So,
it's not using the same. It's not the same distance between the frames as always, right? Sometimes it's like. Let's not go too technical. Basically, it's varying, right? Which
it
feels
might be 8 milliseconds, and the next frame might be 16, right?
They have like a threshold for how high it can go, but not how low it can go. So it's gonna be inconsistent. I mean, you can lock the frame rate, but still, like, that's
no, I think that's very like important and underrated, because I feel like most people who play games that require like a lot of precision understand that like a locked frame rate feels better and more consistent, right? Because you want the same amount of time between the frames, right?
We have talked about this before, actually. I'll just add one thing to what you're saying, that it's actually so if you listen to like technical people, they will usually talk about the fact that time is not matching reality time. Sort of what we talked about last week, actually. That time doesn't match reality, and that makes no sense. So they want to change how time works to make it match, like in the game, to match reality. So they change how long the frames take to make it match how long the time should take in reality. Sorry, that was a dumb sentence. But it feels better, like you said, if the game, like my point is, if you're losing frames, for example, right? Let's say you have it's a very heavy game, right? And you can't keep up with 60 hertz, right? And you go down to like 50 hertz, 50 frames per second. It feels way nicer if the game slows down. Than if it starts doing these compensation things, in my opinion, right? Because
so
it keeps the
I guess
consistency.
we should. I was gonna say I guess we should kind of explain how it works. Basically, like in a locked frame rate game, what happens? So let's say you've locked to 60 FPS, right? If you go below 60, what's gonna happen is that time in game is actually gonna go slower, because time is like
it's fixed.
Always the same for every frame. So like the time that passes in the game is the same every frame of the game. And so what ends up happening is that if you go at 60 FPS, that's 1 second, right? And if you go down to 30, what's going to happen is that in game half a second is going to pass when 1 second in real life has passed, basically. And so what a lot of like technical programmer people are saying to do is to basically time step everything. I think is the technical term. I don't know. So essentially, what they're doing is
differing opinions on like there's different things you can do about it. Some of them are actually nicer than others.
Yeah, but like the basic like standard way to do it is that you basically, if you move a character, for example, you multiply that by like the time. And so what ends up happening is that if the frame takes longer, you move the character more this frame. While if the frame goes faster, like if you have a higher frame rate, you move the character less per frame. And the idea is that, well, then no matter the frame rate, you're always gonna move at the same speed, right? But the thing is that feels like it's very hard to explain. And I think like people who don't play a lot of games won't notice it. But if you do, and especially if you play like games that require a lot of precision, you can feel the like very, very small inconsistencies that brings, and it just feels like sluggish and bad.
Well, it's also not...
And like you're losing control.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it wasn't... it's also not consistent because it only affects the movement. So timing-based things will be off, right? Because... oh boy, technicals... so like if you shoot a gun in the game, right? The timer of that gun is dependent on the frame rate, right? Because you can't fire a shot between the frames.
Yeah.
So if you have higher frame rates, the time until you can actually let's say there's a cooldown on you firing the shot. That cooldown is gonna fire earlier if you have higher frame rates.
Mm-hmm.
Because the margin for the error is gonna be smaller. Because there is more space to do that. So your fire rate is actually gonna change if you change the frame rate, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so like to give a very extreme example, right? Let's say your fire rate is one shot every half second, right? Let's say we have a really, really slow frame that takes 1 second to finish.
Yeah, then
you're only gonna fire once in that second rather than 2, which you were supposed to, right?
Yeah.
That's obviously like a really extreme example where something has gone wrong because 1 FPS isn't playable anyways. But you can understand how that like affects things in small ways, right?
If it's a bit more robust, it will fire 2 shots in 1 frame.
Yeah, true.
So it will like compensate. But that's actually harder to do than you think with all like maybe not in that example, but with like really subtle things, right? Where it's like basically like if statements, right? Any if statement in the code is gonna behave differently at a different frame rate.
Yeah.
Because of this, right? I mean, if statement related to time, right? I guess. I mean, it does. It can affect other ones as well, right? Yeah. So, I guess we should.
Yeah, well, there was one original point to me bringing this up. So, because this is going to bring us back to the topic, right?
Yeah.
So my point is that a lot of technical people say that, locking your frame rate is a crutch and you should do all this like time stepping delta time stuff. Yeah. And some people even advocate like doing even more like super complex stuff in order to handle time properly. And I guess my point is that when you take one of these like pre-made engines or whatever, you're often like taking something that's like created by these people who like don't really know what they're talking about when it comes to this stuff. Like they know the technical stuff very well, but they don't know like the game feel stuff very well, and so they end up creating something like that's complex and more advanced, but actually feels worse to play. And that's sort of my point with like relying on these like pre-made tools.
Yes.
Rather than being in control of everything, right?
Yeah. I mean, you also get. Oh boy, this is like philosophical or whatever, right? But you also like spending more time. I understand. Like some people just want to do design, right? But programming is a part of game development, right? So if you spend more time understanding how these things work, you're gonna be a better designer.
Yeah.
Because if you understand the things we just talked about, right? And can do like if you can implement that, I guess, right? You can make the game feel better, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like you said, relying on the stuff, right? So and that like trickles down to other decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you're doing based on what the engine tells you that you can do, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like one thing that I've noticed is that I'm not gonna say all, but all that I can think of, all designers that I can think of, are also doing not all designers, all good designers that I can think of, also do at least a little bit of programming.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that if you're like a game designer boss at a AAA studio who's never programmed something in your life, you are gonna be bad at game design because you don't understand how the game works under the hood. I think one like way to look at it is like, let's say you have a painter, right? If you have a painter who like doesn't know how to paint, but he tells other people how to, like, what he wants, you wouldn't say that he's a good painter, right?
Yeah.
If you want to use the paint analogy again, right?
Yeah.
A good painter is someone who knows like the tools. He knows how to use the brush, which colors to use when, and whatever, you know. And I think that's like an underrated aspect, because I feel like a lot of game designers, especially like beginner game designers, write off programming quite a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it's very necessary in order to actually be good. Like, obviously you don't need to be like a super advanced engine programmer. You just need to know how to write some gameplay code, basically.
Yeah. But like even then, like the deeper you can go, the better, right? Mm-hmm. It's always better to know more stuff with this. Like maybe this is a bad comparison because painting stuff, like we're not masters of painting stuff, mm-hmm. right? But like one I'm thinking of is like mixing paints, right?
Yeah.
If you know how to mix paints, you're gonna have more freedom with the colors, right? Yeah. But if you're like, no, I don't want to mix my own, I buy like pre-made paints and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're like, crap, I don't have like this nuance of like green gray thing that I need, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like limited, right, by that. You're like, mm-hmm. okay, I guess it will be gray, right?
Yeah.
But if you know how to mix paints, you're like, oh, okay, I have this. I mean, green or gray or what, like this new. You get what I'm saying, right? Yeah. You can just mix whatever you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that applies to this as well. Is my point, right? With programming and game design, like they're very overlapping, right?
Yeah.
And also, like a lot of this stuff that people do, that I've seen in these engines, right? They are very smart people, and like they could just make their own, like what they're doing is mm-hmm. more advanced than just making something in like monogame or whatever, like I said, right?
Yeah.
It would be faster for them to do it in monogame because mm-hmm. they know how to do all, like I can see that they know what they're doing. They're just I guess convinced by peer pressure that they should use the engine or something. I don't know.
I mean, it could also be that, like, you know, if someone uses only Unity, for example, it's that they learned Unity and they know how it works, so they just keep doing it in Unity.
Yeah,
which obviously, you know, it makes sense. If you already know the tool, it's going to be faster than
that is true.
Learning something.
Yeah, that is actually an important point as well.
And I think, actually, to be honest, I think there is like value in, like, obviously there is value in knowing the tool, right? But I think like if you are really 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 good at Unity, you know how it works, you know all the ins and outs of the engine, I think it makes more sense to stay like, I still think it's worth like exploring your own stuff, but it makes more sense for you to stay on Unity than someone who doesn't know it very well, right? Because you know how to like work around all of the weird crappy stuff that you don't want.
I guess, but my point is also that if you are the kind of person that can do that, like know your ways around Unity, then you're probably also someone that could learn how to make it with something more with more freedom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was, I think this is a good time to bring it up, because there was one point we wanted to bring up, which is going back to this AAA studios thing.
Yeah.
We've been discussing a lot in our past videos. We even discussed it a little bit with Bogog when he was on the show, about like the hyper specialization of big studios, right?
Yeah.
And I think one very interesting phenomenon that you see when this happens is that like, so let's say you have like a programmer team, right? You have an engine programmer team or whatever. And then you have a game designer team. And if you have like a really big studio where these people are like hyper specialized and don't know anything about whatever anyone else is doing, then you're not going to have a lot of communication between these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is that you end up in situations where like, it goes back a bit to the time thing, right? That we discussed. It's like, the programmers have this like really cool idea of this really cool programming thing that they could implement, which programmers enjoy because it's a complicated programming thing, right? But it ends up actually being to the detriment of the game designers, right? Who are supposed to use these tools.
Yeah.
And so I think this is the moment to bring it up, Edvard. Our favorite, the entity component system.
Well, before you bring that up, actually,
Yeah,
I want to say one more thing about what you said.
Yeah.
Which is that I think it's even worse than that, which is that like, it's not that just that they like tinkering or whatever you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
And building. It's that because the disciplines are so separate, right? It's sort of going back to the painter thing I said, right? Where it's like it's sort of having the person that mixes the paint not being the same individual that uses them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like,
yeah.
Can you make like the green? Can you mix the like green? I mean, that's what happens when you buy paint, I guess. But but like if you buy paint, I feel like they still had like someone involved, right, with
mm-hmm.
the that knew the paints. But the point is, you get this extra step, right, and you sort of lose. Like translating from one person to the other, right? Because they're not in the same discipline, right? Takes longer. So it's not even that they're... Okay, I need to step back so I can explain this better.
Mm-hmm.
There's two problems here, right? One problem is there is two people, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have two people, they need to communicate, which makes the vision or whatever. Let's say one of them has the vision of whatever we're doing with this game, right? Communicating that vision, even if we're the same discipline, you lose some of that vision, right? Mm-hmm. Because it goes between two people, okay? Or more. Now we introduce different disciplines, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there is overlap in the disciplines, it's again easier, right? So if we go back in time, like we discussed with Bogog, right? Where like the programmers, they were designers as well back in the day. Then they have overlap with the designers, so they understand designer language. I mean, in those days there probably was they were the designers, right? The programmers. But whatever, it would be, you could have someone like what I mean is, if you have someone that's really good at design and decent at programming, and you have someone that is really good at programming and decent at design, those two are going to work better than someone that is great at game design and someone that is great at programming. They're not going to accomplish anything. It's going to be completely impossible for them to get anything done, because they're not speaking the same language at all, right? Mm-hmm. And this is like undervalued in general in all of this stuff, right? Not just game stuff, like tech stuff in general, actually, and maybe probably in other disciplines as well, right? Where this, like, back to the hyper specialization, right? That you're losing the bigger picture, and there is nothing more valuable for the process, right, than someone that knows how to communicate between the disciplines, right? Because if you have if you only know one thing, then you don't... It's like you said, it's like, well, with the time thingy, right? It's, the programmer is just optimizing for time. What is that designer even talking about? Like, this is clearly better, because if you do it this way, it's matching time, right? Yeah. But the designer is worried about the things we're talking about with the, like, game feel. But the programmer might not even play video games, right? Yeah. Sometimes they're just a programmer.
In fact, that's quite common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's they don't even know. They just want to build the game tech stuff, right? They don't even care about the game.
Yeah, that's
so
what
then
they
it's really hard to get across like the point of what do you mean the game's slowing down? That's super dumb, right? No, like that's. I mean, it's not the nicest thing ever that the game slows down if you have a low frame rate, but the opposite, like the drawbacks of not doing it that way, are worse in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
There again, just to clarify, if there's some like super tech nerd, there are sort of ways where you can do it. Even like there are ways, but it's like still not perfect in my opinion, and like it's way more complicated. Like you step whatever. We're not going there. Just to cover our ass.
Yeah.
So now we can go back to what you wanted to talk about.
Well, there is one thing I want to point out first, and it's very relevant to the entity component system that we're going to bring up, is that what you said is completely true, and I agree. But I do think it's also worth pointing out that in a lot of cases, there isn't even communication between the disciplines when it comes to these things.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you will literally have situations where the programmers decide amongst themselves that this is how we're going to do it. And they take that decision without the game designers because the programmers are in charge of the tech and that's their role and they're supposed to do the tech stuff. And so they decide what's the best way to do the tech stuff. And they don't even ask the game designers because they're not the tech people. And the problem with that is that you end up with things like the entity component system, right? So I guess
can I add one thing to what you just said?
Go ahead.
So I think there is that issue goes the other way as well, right? Where it's like, it's not only that the programmers don't care about what the designers think, so they do these entity component systems and stuff, right? It's also that the designers are not invested enough in the technology, right? Because if they were someone that knew both tech and design, right? They could argue for their things better as well, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, tech people are kind of shitty in general, right? So with this stuff, right? They think they're right a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. About a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Now for the third time.
So I guess we don't.
What is an entity component system, Ludwig? Please tell me.
Okay, so you know how I'm gonna try to explain this for someone who doesn't program. So you know how like in Unity or something you have components, right? So you have the entity or game object or whatever it's called, and then you have and then you have like a collider component, or you have a rigid body physics component or whatever, right? And these components they have a bunch of data and they run a bunch of code and stuff. So if you put a rigid body on an object in Unity, it will like gain physics, and there are like physics values you can play with and stuff like that, and everything just works because you put the component on the entity. The entity component system is basically the traditional way to do it, I guess, is that you bundle the components with the entity, right? So if you have an entity and they have a rigid body and they have like a player script or whatever, then all of that is with the entity. What the entity component system does, I want to say the latest programming trend, but it's probably like 5 to 10 years old at this point.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to some people, they're arguing that it was introduced in like the...
But essentially, the way you do it instead is that you group the components by themselves instead of grouping the components with the game object. So you have all of the rigid bodies by themselves, disconnected from the game object, and then you have all the player scripts by themselves. And when you run the code, you basically update all of the rigid bodies at once instead of updating, the player. And inside the player update, you update the rigid body, and then the enemy, and you update the rigid body inside the enemy. You do all rigid bodies at once, and then that's like completely disconnected from the entities or game objects. And the value of this from the programmer side, right? Because this is like a very trendy programmer thing to do, right? You want to implement an entity component system into your engine. The benefit of this is that a lot of times is perhaps wrong, but in certain cases it makes the code run a lot faster, right? So I think one very common application of an entity component system where like it's actually good at what it's doing is in like physics calculations and stuff like that, right? Like because having all of the physics stuff separated into different entities and like having to like go to the entity update, go to the other entity update, go to the third entity update, that's way slower than just doing all the physics stuff at once and then like not giving it to the entities, but then being able to access it from the entities, right?
Yeah, I think you lost some people here.
Yeah. I maybe went into a bit too much. Anyways, my point is that there is a very big problem with the entity component system, and it is the thing that I pointed out, which is that it's disconnected from the game object, right? And so what ends up happening is that it becomes very, very hard to like it becomes, I guess, less modular. Maybe that's not the right way to say it, but like it's very hard to do things for a designer or like someone who's just like playing around with the components or whatever.
Yeah. I mean,
because
you can get around it if like the tooling on top is super duper good, like they basically hide it right with scripts and stuff, but a lot of the time it's not the best.
Yeah, most of the time it's like it makes the job of like whoever's doing the gameplay code harder. It makes gameplay code more complicated is the point. But and to bring this, or so yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like this is sort of an issue with a lot of these engines, right? Because people always complain, right? You should or complain. People always say you shouldn't do your own stuff like at all because these things are so complicated, right? Yeah. These engines are super complicated, is what they say. And you know what? They are 100% correct. These engines are insanely fucking complicated. But the thing is, most games don't need any of that. It's so unnecessary for basically all games. Like we're talking, like even 3D games, right? It's not like 3D is expensive, right? Computers are so fast. It's like sometimes, oh my god, like you're like, surely I can't do this, but you can. Computers are fast. Yeah. It's insane. But like it's like these optimize, like these ways they're structuring basically to like summarize, like simplify what Ludwig just said. It's like they structure all the game engine internals in a very cumbersome way to make it run faster, right? And the thing is, you don't need that for most of these games, right? If you want to make anything that is, I mean, let's say you want to make something that looks like something that came out in like 10 years ago or whatever, you don't need to do any of this. The computers are so fast that you can just do whatever. Yeah. I mean, again, maybe if you do like the absolutely, I don't even what's like the most heavy game from 10 years ago. It doesn't matter. Like the point is, if you're making the kinds of games we're interested in, right, the good games, they don't have all of this crap, right? So it doesn't matter. Yeah. Right. And you can make, just like even when you use the tools, right? Like just not trying to not make things too complicated, I guess. Yeah. For yourself as well, right? Just I think a lot, because the disciplines are split, right? It becomes this thing where people over focus. We already touched on it, but like even in the like gameplay layer, right? Where there's different axes to optimize, right? Yeah. And if you want to do interesting stuff, you need to optimize for efficiency. So like okay. So there's you don't want to optimize for time necessarily, right? Because like that's always the argument, right? Oh, you make the code slower, so you optimize for time. I guess it's optimizing for time, but my point is, if you can write things in a way, and again, that's why I think it's so important to know how to code stuff, right? I mean, even if you're using an engine, right? Just knowing how to code right? I'm not saying you need to be a god programmer or whatever. Like, you can make your life so much easier, right? If you know how to make things in a way so you can iterate on them fast, right? One of the biggest issues, in my opinion, with Unity is it takes like 10 years to start and 10 years to like build the stuff and then 10 years to start the game.
Yeah.
How are you gonna
like,
iterate
all the time.
How are you gonna iterate on your design if you have it that way? Whereas like if you have something like, and you can set up things in Unity so it's more efficient, like maybe you can make it like reload things without closing the game.
Yeah,
or
well,
whatever.
doesn't Unity do this thing where like as soon as you save a script it like builds everything and it takes like at least 5 seconds?
Yes.
And like way more when you have more code.
Yeah.
And it's like completely unbearable to work in Unity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my point is like, if you made something like, I don't want to sound like, oh, you have to do everything by hand, but like if you said, let's say you used like some framework like Monogame or whatever, or like we mentioned earlier, right? And you just wrote a thing that's like just you have a, I don't know, when you launch the thing, it launches into the thing you want immediately, and it's gonna launch faster because it's not loading all this stuff that you don't need, and it's gonna load the right thing because it loads what you wanted, right? And then you can iterate way faster.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's going back to like programming a little bit. I think that's very interesting when you see like how programmers do things, because usually when I program I do things, I basically try to solve the problem in the easiest possible way.
Yes.
Which apparently is very uncommon, because programmers love to like spend time thinking about how to do stuff and like implementing these weird complex systems and whatever. And so I feel like, you know, when I say that I like do engine programming stuff to people, they think that I'm some wizard, but I'm really a guy with duct tape essentially. And
but the thing is, it's not even true, right? The ironic thing is you're saying it in that way. Well, it's like haha duct tape, right? But
yeah,
the robustness actually goes up because you focused on solving the problem you had.
Yeah.
So your solution is actually 1-to-1 with what the problem was.
Yes.
So there's no added like stuff that can go wrong, if that makes sense. It's like it just does, and it can only do what you wanted it to.
Yeah.
But if you have someone that's very engineer minded or whatever, they'll do these things that it's gonna cost them, I guess, down the line, because they're solving issues they don't have.
Yeah, that was sort of the point I wanted to make, because I think a lot of programmers react with that, like, oh no, you need to make like a robust, complicated system from the start because you're gonna regret it later when things get more complicated. And the thing is, like, if I end up needing something more complicated, I can fix that later. That's sort of my point.
Yeah.
And usually, or not usually, I would actually say always, that ends up being the better choice, because the thing is, I can't solve a problem that I don't know that I have yet.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, because then I'm just guessing what my problem is gonna be in the future. But if I like do the simplest thing I can now, and then like 3 months later when I realize, okay, that was way too simple, I need to make something more complicated, then I can once again solve the problem and do the simplest thing that solves that problem. And then that solution is actually better than like trying to make some general thing that's gonna work for all cases and whatever. And I feel like that's one of the like biggest benefits of doing your own engine stuff, because what ends up happening if you're using Unity or whatever is that you end up being locked into this like way of doing things, I guess. It's like if you want to do something that's like weird or unusual or unorthodox or whatever in something like Unity, you're gonna end up like fighting the engine most of the time, right? Because the engine is made to be as general as possible. And so, yeah, if you're making a 2D platformer, you're probably gonna be fine. But if you're gonna do something weird, you're gonna run into problems.
I want to clarify one thing with what you're saying, though. So like, when we're saying game engines, for me at least, the thing that's causing issues here is things where you don't own the game loop, right? So I'm not talking about like pseudo game engine stuff, right? Where it's like, or like frameworks or whatever, like this, higher level, like, I don't know, Love 2D or like Mono Game, like we talked about earlier, right? These are super great, right? And engines are also
because
great,
you like control the code, right? You write
the point is you control the game loop, so you can do the things we talked about, and you control what the game objects are, right? And yes, it does require a lot more work, right, to figure all of this out. But I feel like if like you'll run into all of these things anyways in the framework, like in the engine, if you work with it seriously, right? So you'll have to deal with this anyways, right?
Yeah, I mean, we could bring up the like example that like we've been working on recently, right? So we've been looking at implementing rollback netcode in GameMaker, and if you watched our video with Bogog, you'll know why. So you should check that out. A little bit of marketing here. But the thing is that, the more we like work on it, the more we like get into this. Well, okay, it's actually like this from the start, but it's like, in order to make rollback netcode in GameMaker, you essentially have to write your own entity, like handling stuff inside GameMaker. And so you end up with having to write an engine inside the engine in order to do what you want. And that's way more complicated than just making your own engine. Because the problem with something like GameMaker is that, we're making an engine in this like super slow scripting language with really garbage collection or whatever, and it's gonna be super slow. Whereas if we made it in our own engine, we could loop a billion things and it would be fine.
Probably not a billion things, but a
no,
million.
not a billion
things,
but a lot of things.
A million things you can loop, but a billion, I don't know about that.
Yeah, whereas in GameMaker, it's like, okay, we have 2,000 objects and we're already struggling with performance.
Yeah. But it's like in GameMaker's defense, right? If you're trying to do the thing that GameMaker wants you to do, the scripts are perfectly fine because they're just made to run these like one-off things. They're not like, the issue is that what we're trying to do, like we need to loop through all these objects and do the like basically handle the stuff that the engine is
that
handling.
GameMaker already does.
Yeah, in an efficient way, right? Internally, it does it in a more efficient way, but you can't do that because of reliability stuff, right? For the thing. So then you have to do this thing again, and this is sort of what I meant going back to like the Unity thing, where some like people do these things, right? In Unity as well, right? Where they'll implement all these things, and I look at what they've done, and all of these things they've done, like, they've basically done more work, right? Because, and I get it, like they're used to Unity or whatever, right? And I would definitely way rather have a lot of developers that know how to use these tools, right? Like Unity and GameMaker and Godot and stuff, than nothing at all, right? Because more games, right? It's good. I guess just
I think the problem is more that people dismiss doing your own tech.
Yeah, but
as
I
a
don't,
waste of time.
So like the thing is, I we need to come up with a like more fancy, or not fancy, like more harmless way to say it, right? Because like the way when you say it, right, it sounds like we're saying, oh, you should like do stupid things like we do, where you like write it in like C or C++ and like low level stuff, right? But that's not what we're saying at all, right? We're saying you should use as many frameworks and stuff as you can. But I think if you want to take the game, like, if you want to take your control or whatever, your flexibility of what you're doing to the next level, you need to control the game loop, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
You need that control, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It helps a lot.
Yeah,
right?
and these engines like Unity and GameMaker don't give you that control.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, right? Because if you don't need the control, then it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
You
know, if you're doing the things that the engines want you to do, they are way more efficient, right? Like we said, that's why I started this entire discussion with like, well, if you're not that much into programming and you just want games out and you want to do like 2D games, GameMaker is fucking awesome, right? It's perfect.
Yeah.
But I guess more experimental games is gonna be like another like great example is like doing RTSs, for example, right? I think this is one of the reasons why we don't have that many RTSs. Going back to our topic, actually, instead of just talking about tech, right? RTSs are very uncommon, and in my opinion, at least, right? And
like
I think,
especially among indie stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's because there's no tools for making RTS games at all.
Yeah.
All tools are designed for like single character control. And it's really hard to take engines that are built for single character control and make, having you control like hundreds of units.
Yeah. Because making an RTS in Unity is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And you kind of do have to go around the game object system, right? As we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe if you only have a few units, you can get by, but like if you start having a lot of units, you're gonna run into problems.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, as you said, that like, it makes it way harder to make these kinds of games.
That's sort of more the point, in my opinion, of what we're talking about, right? That there is a bunch of like genres and stuff that are lost because the tools are very formed around these kind. Like there is a ton of whatever. I mean, some of them are because like like a perfect example. I mean, it's not a perfect example, but like why is there so many Vampire Survivor clones, for example, right? You could argue it's because they are popular or whatever, and that's part of it. But it's like it's a combination. They're popular and they're easy to make, right?
Yeah.
And I think I guess this is more a call to programmers, right? Programmers / designers. We need to figure out a way to make tools, like more tools available to people so they can make less boring stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like like I said earlier with RTS, right? There should be more stuff for making stuff like RTS or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And there are super for shmups, for example, there's like Shmup Creator and what's the other one? Like STG Create. I don't remember what they're called. They're like like super duper specialized. And those that's like that stuff is super good, right? Because it's like you can just focus on like you want to do a shmup, you can make a shmup, or like RPG Maker. I mean, not the greatest,
like puzzle script for puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. Puzzle script for puzzle.
Yeah.
Those are like super good stuff like that, right? And I feel like those tools that are shaped that way are more interesting, right? These general purpose engines are kind of garbage, right? Because you can't really get and they aren't as general purpose as we said, right? They are sort of focused on this one character or whatever, right? But with these super specialized things, you can iterate way faster, right? I guess my point.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's going back to like the programming thing. I think that's why it's so useful to know how to do a bit of like tech stuff, because like if you want to make an RTS, like I would even say like even if you do it in Unity, having a lot of technical skill will help
Yeah.
you shape, like force Unity to do what you want, right? Whereas if you don't know what you're doing, if you're a very bad programmer, you don't know how to like what the problems are with Unity if you're gonna make an RTS. Whereas if you're a good programmer, then you know, okay, this is how Unity works. This is how I'm gonna have to like work around that fact.
Yeah.
And so even if you're not using your own stuff, you end up knowing more like what's good practice and what isn't. And so like even if you aren't like making your own engines or stuff like that, it's still worth it to know. Yeah.
Yeah, and these have like way subtler like if we like there is a bunch of like super subtle things that trickle down. So like I'm trying to think of a good example, but think of a developer that made like a lot of games that are like sort of similar. Do you have an example?
Like the solitaire guy, what's he called?
I guess, yeah, but those are two different. I guess it's a sort of good example.
Yeah.
Um,
like Grey Alien Games.
Grey Alien Games, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He like he has showed like what his tools sometimes, right? And I don't remember if it was a podcast or something. I think I've seen like and they're very specialized for making these like solitaire games, right? But it's a bit different from what I'm trying to say though. So like think of like a AAA franchise of some kind. I don't know.
AAA franchise.
Yeah.
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty, is that a good example? Yeah, sure. Right. Let's go with Call of Duty. Okay. If you think about so like if you think about how Call of Duty feels, right? It feels very different from something like Battlefield. Okay, let's go with that boring example. Let's go Battlefield, yeah. Call of Duty, right?
20-year-old
yeah.
battle.
You could argue partly it's because of differing opinions in design, right? Which is. But a lot of the differences there is like random technical decisions that was made, right? In how it feels, and like these things affect the design. Like I'm trying to think of a
I think actually that's a really, really, really good example.
Is it? Okay.
Because this is something we've discussed before. The finals, right? So the finals is made by a bunch of ex-DICE devs, right?
Yeah.
They left DICE and started Embark or whatever. And like the final is a really, 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 really bad game. I think it's absolutely terrible, in my opinion.
Yeah, they probably they didn't get the game designer half of.
Yeah, they didn't get the design. Well, Battlefield designers weren't that good either. But like they got some of the worst designers in the world at that studio somehow. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is that when you play the finals, you will instantly notice that it feels exactly like playing Battlefield like 3 or 4 if you play that a lot back in the
Which
day.
Is ironic, by the way, because it's running on Unreal Engine.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different engine, and yet it feels the same way. And why is that? It's because it's the same programmers writing the code, right? That's sort of the point. It's like there's this like really distinct feel. I think part of it is also like in the animations that like the running animation is a bit too slow compared to how the player moves. That's like a very typical like Battlefield game feel thing, and you notice that in the finals too. So like there's all these like tiny details in like the implementation and in the graphics and all that makes the finals feel like something like Battlefield 4, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the developers over at Activision or like one of the 10 studios that do Call of Duty nowadays, they don't know how to do that stuff. They know how to do stuff their own way.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like very interesting. I guess it's sort of like a little bit different because like the final, as you said, uses different technically, right?
Yeah, but they probably made
so-
similar decisions in how they handle
True,
things
yeah.
because it's the same programmers, right, that made Battlefield.
Yeah. But like there
It could
are
also be
these,
like the animators and stuff, right, also affected.
Yeah.
So like there's a ton of things that are affected.
Yeah, but the point still stands, right? It's like these like very small implementation differences end up mattering, and that's what makes the finals feel just like a Battlefield game.
Yeah.
Like it's not something you can point at and say, "Whoa, that's exactly why it feels this way." It's like a bunch of very, very tiny things, probably like things that aren't physically noticeable by a human, right? Because of how the code works or whatever. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but like that does make sense, and I agree. But like a thing I want to like. It is so hard to explain what I'm trying to say. Like, let's take, I don't know. Let's talk about From Software, because we love talking about From Software all the time, right? The way their internal tools are structured, because I don't know, so I'm gonna make some shit up, right?
Yeah.
Assume I would guess they have like very robust tools for making bosses, for example, right? Or like boss moves and stuff, and this has like super like this has implications on everything, right? Because based on how these tools are formed, the design changes, right? More than people think about a lot of the time. I'm trying to think of a good.
Makes sense.
I'm trying to think of a good example because there's no comparison there. Like, okay, you know what? Let's talk about shmups. Shmups is a perfect example. Okay, so we're gonna take the two camps here. We're gonna talk about the Toho games and Cave games. Okay. So the way the bosses are structured in those games are very different, right? And maybe that is like. These like it's definitely partly intentional, right? What they wanted, but I think the way the moves turn out is also affected by how they are structured in the engine, right? So to clarify what I mean is like in Cave games, moves are very they're similar to like you've played. I mean, you've played some Cave games, but you played more of the what is it called, like the Emerald Blue, right? Yeah. They're structured in that way, where it's like you have like ABC parts to a move, and they cycle, right? Sort of more traditional way, right? Where it's going through a bunch of moves, and then maybe it switches phase, right? Whereas the way it's structured usually in Toho games is it's one attack, and then you change attack. Okay, and so why am I why does this matter? Like, obviously that's just they decided to design differently. Yes, that is true, they decided to design differently, but this also affect like the way the engine is structured, right? I am sure there, like, you get what I'm saying, right? Where it's like there is probably, I don't have the Toho engine, so I don't know, there's probably like, you know, something that's like, okay, here is the first spell, here is the second spell, right, or whatever. Yeah. Whereas in Cave's engine, maybe there isn't. Maybe it's not structured in that way. Maybe, let's say we're making shit up, right? Let's say it's structured like, oh, you have a bunch of like patterns, and like you can hook them up to like different phases or something. I don't know. I'm making shit up, right? Yeah. But that small difference, right? Sure, it's a design decision, and you can get there. You can decide where you want to go with that, but just by how the engine is structured, it affects future decisions, right? Yeah. It's sort of because like my point is it's way harder for, again, I don't know how they're. Let's pretend they're implemented in the way I said, right? It's way harder for the Cave people to do a pattern in the style of Toho, right? And it's harder for. It's not impossible. Okay, you get what I'm saying, right? It's not hard, but my point is it is harder, right? And that is super important detail, right? Because if something is harder to do than something else, you usually do the easier thing, right? So your things start becoming like similar because, or like they are formed by the tools. Do you get what I'm saying, right? Even if you can, like, it's not super complicated to write a new loop that does the other thing if you really want to do the other thing. But the fact that it's already set up to be structured in one way makes it easier to take that path. I guess that was what I was saying.
Yeah, I think like, especially when it comes to like the default way to do things.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you end up kind of like, oh, I need to do this. Okay, so then you just do it the default way, right?
Yeah.
And you don't think about it. Like maybe with something as important as bullet patterns in a shmup, you might have some like put some more thought into it. But if it's like there are a bunch of like super tiny decisions that you have to make about your game along the way, right? And for most of those, you're just gonna do whatever's easiest.
Yes.
And so what the easiest thing to do is ends up affecting the final product a lot.
But I still think it affects more serious things as well, right? Because it's
of course.
It's because like it's easier for you to do the things like. It's not only that it's easier for you to do it that way, it's also that your mind, right? Humans like using tools, right?
Yeah.
And the way, you know, there is this like, if you have a hammer, everything starts looking
everything
like...
looks like a nail.
That happens with this as well, right? Where it's like, if your engine is structured to design patterns in a certain way or something else, right? Then you will start thinking of patterns in that way, right? Mm-hmm. And that goes for other things, and again, like small things and big things, right? Yeah, I guess that was my point.
No, I think that's a very good way to put it. I also thought of that like hammer thing when you said all that. So yeah,
and I guess that's sort of like the one of the main things I wanted to bring up right today, which is that. That part of it, I think that this like move away from building things actually has limited the space of like how people think about games more than people want to admit, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like the variety of how, like, if you look at really old games, people like they're very varied, right, in how they feel. And some of it from like how they're structured today is because people want like what do you say, you know what I mean, like they become similar because people want similar things, right? That's part of it. But I think this is part of it as well, where it's like there was just way more random ways to implement things. Like if you look at if we don't even have to go that far, if we go back to like the early 3D games versus now, right, there's way more variety in stuff like cameras and
well, at the same time also, you know, there were a lot of games using like the id engine, id Tech or whatever.
I mean, and Call of Duty is id Tech, so
okay, well, I'm thinking more like, you know, Quake and stuff like that.
I mean, it is that engine they use.
And my point is that a lot of those end up feeling the same. Like if you go back to the shooters that used that engine around that time, and that's because they use the same engine. Is sort of our point. But then you have also like, you know, back in the day there was more variety because now everything's made in Unreal Engine and Unity, right?
Yeah.
Whereas before, you know, maybe id Tech was the most popular FPS engine, but there were a lot of other FPS engines too. Or like in Call of Duty, someone took the engine and like remade it heavily for their game. Because people had the technical knowledge, right? Yeah, and it goes back to what we said about like Unreal Engine at the start as well. It's like if you've played a generic AA first-person shooter in the last 10 years, you've basically played them all. Because they're all implemented in Unreal Engine and they all have the same gunplay and they all have the same graphics and they all have the same everything. I guess our point is that that's kind of boring. And like if these AA studios were making their own engines, we would have a bit more variety, I guess.
I guess even like if you're not in a position where you can like do your own stuff, thinking more about, you know, not making it generic, I guess.
Yeah.
like
not using the built-in physics system or whatever. You know?
Or tweaking it a bit.
Yeah, exactly. You could also
not
do that.
use the stock physics engine.
Stock, yeah, exactly. Stock acceptance.
That feels good. Yeah, okay. Whatever.
Yeah. I slapped a rigid body component on this one. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to add before we...
I mean...
We have thrown a lot of technical information.
It was a bit too
viewers.
technical today. I'm sorry. I tried to keep it down.
You deserve it. I don't know what that means. But yeah, hopefully you found it a bit interesting, even though it's very technical. Maybe that's something the viewers should leave a comment about down below. Yeah. Do they like the technical videos or not? But yeah, I guess that's it from us, unless you wanted to say something more.
I know what you did, yeah.
Yeah. The big lesson of today is that if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yes.
And let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.